This conference will now be recorded.
Hi guys, good morning. I hope you are able to hear me. So in the last session, we have seen how we can install Microsoft SQL Server 2022. And in order to communicate with this, we need to have a SQL Server Management Studio. That is, we can also call it as a SSMS. So which is a client tool. To talk with this, we are going to use a tool called SQL Server Management Studio. So I'm going to show you how we can install SQL Server Management Studio as part of your system. SQL Server Management Studio. I'm just going to take the latest version. So 19.x is the latest version. So I'm just downloading this. Let's open this exe file. And I'm just going to say install. Let's say yes. So when you install SQL Server Management Studio, both will come along with, I mean to say, SQL Server Management Studio along with the Azure Data Studio. So there's two client tools you can use to communicate with the SQL Server. Let it install. In a couple of minutes, it will be completed. Now installation is completed. Let's close this one. And I'm just going to open the SQL Server Management Studio. So I told you I have a database in the server. And if I wanted to communicate this, then we need to use the SQL Server Management Studio. So why we need to use this one? To prepare the SQL code. To prepare the SQL code, we are going to use this. So it's a client tool. Before using the code as part of any BI tool, we need to make sure the query is executable. Then only we can go and use that as part of appropriate BI tools. Let's open the SQL Server Management Studio. When I type here, you can see there is a SQL Server Management Studio 19 version. Let's open this. And we need to select the database. Server type is database engine, and server name, your system name is the server name. And since we installed SQL Server with Windows authentication in the last session, I'm just going to take with the same Windows authentication. Let's connect it. So once I connected, then to practice this one, I'm going to create a database. I'm going to create a database. So why we need to use the SQL Server? I'll take you through that. Before that, let me create a database. So in the last session, I talked about how we can create a database. Let's select the databases, and you can see there is a new query window. So you can also use the Control N to have a new window will be opened. So this is the first step. You need to do it right after opening your SQL Server Management Studio. And it is going to say what is the name of the server and what is the username and what type of what database you are using to do it. So I'm there in the master database. Everything will be there from the master database. We are going to control it. And we are not going to have any administrator rights on top of this. But since I'm the owner of this particular server, automatically this account will be used as an administrator also. Okay, at the time of installation, we have taken this account as an administrator. So I'm going to create a database. To create a database, create a database name, I'm just saying a data store. The database name I'm saying data store. Let's execute it. Now query is executed. If I wanted to go inside the data store, we are going to use, if I wanted to do it with code, we are going to use the statement called use database name. So this is very frequently we are going to use at the time of working. To move from one database to another database, use database name. If I execute this, at this point of time, you're able to see the master. Once you execute this particular statement, then you can see the name of the database will be changed. Select this only this statement. Do not go for all the statements and do not unselect and execute it. Select whatever you wanted to execute and execute it. Now you can see the database name is a data store now. And here also you can see what database we are using here. That's fine. So this is the first things you need to do it. In real time, you're not going to create a database, but there is a chances to use the database. Let's say someone created a database and they're asking you to create objects. So database is nothing but the collection of objects. So collection of objects means like a table is an object. Okay. You can create a table. You can create a view. You can create an index. You can create triggers. Okay, and you can create a stored procedures. What else? You can create stored functions, something like this. So you're going to create it. All these things we can call them as a objects. So collection of objects together, we can call it as a database. Collection of objects is known as a database. Collection of databases sitting together. that we can call it as a server. So RudraSoft, RSoft is the server name, and you'll be having multiple databases here. And every database is going to have all these things. So database 1 will have all these objects. Database 2 is going to have all the subjects, something like that. So collection of databases are going to sit together in the server. Server is a centralized point, centralized location where we are going to have a multiple databases. So if I wanted to see my user defined databases here, if you select the databases folder and there is an option called refresh, just hit on refresh. Now you can see the data store is the database. Let's expand this data store and you can see here what are the things available. And when I expand these tables, you're not having anything here. User defined tables are not available. I wanted to know how we can create a tables. First of all, how can I communicate with this database? How can I communicate with this database? So this is what I'm going to take you through. I may go a little faster because we have to cover many things. So SQL Server will be used, I mean to say, to connect to the SQL Server, we are going to use the SQL, which is known as a structured query language. If we know this structured query language, it's not only for SQL Server, you can also use it for the Oracle, and you can also use it for the DB2, MySQL. Okay, so for many things you can use it. It's a common standard language it is. So that is what I'm saying. It's a standard language used to interact with the relational databases. So whatever the databases we are going to talk, we are going to call, all those things we can call them as a RDBMS tools. RDBMS tools. So SQL Server is a RDBMS tool. Oracle is a RDBMS tool. MySQL is a RDBMS tool. And DB2 is a RDBMS tool, and so on. So there are so many RDBMS tools out there. So we don't care about too many RDBMS tools. At least one RDBMS tool you should know about it. So that is what we are going to take SQL Server here. Since we are working with Power BI or since we are working with Azure Data Factory, Microsoft SQL Server is the base point for us because this product is also coming from the Microsoft. There are several types of SQL languages that are commonly used. I told you in the last session, we are having a subcategories of this SQL structured query language. So one of them is the data definition language. We can also call this as a DDL. And data manipulation language, DML. Data control language, that is DCL. Transaction control language, that is TCL. Data querying language, that is DQL. So very important for us is the fifth one. Very, very important. Okay, and there is a chances to talk about this too also. Okay, there is a chances, not exactly, but 100% this is required for us as we are a readers, especially the people who are going to work with Power BI is always going to be readers only. But if you're working with the Azure Data Factory or SSIS, there is a chances to use even this two very frequently also, DDL and DML. Because ETL extraction, transformation, and loading. So at the time of loading, you're going to use this DML kind of statements. That's fine. So let's go with one by one. I'll give brief idea about each and every item so that you'll get better clarity. But my concentration will be more on this particular place. Data coding language is the 80% of the time we are going to spend with this. The first one is data definition language. What is this data definition language? If I wanted to create a database, then we are going to use the create statement, right? That is what we have used, create database. Database name we have given. Here we have given a database name. So what database we have created? Something like that. Create database. Database name is what? Data store. So that is what we have done it. So if I wanted to define an object, if I wanted to define an object in the database, or if I wanted to create a database, then definitely we need to use the statement called create. So to create something, we are going to use this. You can create a database, you can create a table, you can create a view, you can create a stored procedure, whatnot, whatever the objects we are having, all those objects we are going to create with create statement. So that is what it is defining. We are defining with the data definition. We are defining the object. So data definition language is used to define the database and database schema also. Okay, what is the schema? We'll see that. And create a database objects. Not only defining the database schema, we're also going to create a database objects. I told you what are the objects we're having. Tables we can create, views we can create, indexes we can create, constraints we can create, stored procedures, stored functions, and so on. So when the moment you say, or when the moment you get a requirement to create something, then definitely we are going to use DDL. Data definition language defines the database objects. So example of DDL statements, create is a DDL statement. After creation, if I wanted to alter the object, I feel the size of the object is small. I wanted to reduce it, or I wanted to add something to the object. Then we need to go with the alter. The name itself saying that we are going to alter the object. And if you wanted to drop the object, then you can also go for dropping of the object. So all these are related to database. So we can create a database objects, we can modify the database objects, and we can also drop the database objects. So these three statements you just keep in mind. How we can use them, it's a different story. But at least you need to have an idea what is this DDL. After creation of the object, let's say this is a database, right? And I have a table here, table 1, table 2, table 3, and so on. After creation of the object in the database, we need to load the data into the table. We need to load the data into the table. So to load the data into the table, we are going to use the language called data manipulation language. We are going to manipulate the data. We are going to manipulate the data. How we can manipulate? By using this data manipulation language. By using data manipulation language. So basically they used to call this select also is part of data manipulation, but I'm just going to take out this. So you will be having this three: insert, update, and delete. Insert, update, and delete. So where exactly we are going to use this select as part of this DML also, I'll take you through that. So at this point of time, I'm just making this hide. So DML is used to manipulate data within the database. So within the database means for the tables. So you can use this select statement also as part of this DML. Where exactly it is going to be possible to use, when you see that, then you can feel, yes, this is also coming under the DML. But originally you are going to have this insert, update, and delete. So insert means to feed the data into the table. Insert means to feed the data into the table. Update means after inserting the data, I feel I entered the wrong value. Then you need to go for update. So it's not only just for that, there are many reasons are there to go for update. And delete also is the same thing. If you wanted to delete it, how you are going to delete it. So all these DML operations will be useful only the people who are going to work with ADF and SSIS. If the persons are working with ADF and SSIS, I'm sure they're going to touch these statements. If you're working with only Power BI, you don't require to do all these things. So that is about DML. And DCL is there. So DCL, it's not our job basically. This is administrators are going to take care about it. That is not part of for us. So DCL is just to control the access to the database by granting or revoking privileges to the users. If everyone is not going to connect to this database, they're going to give access. How they're going to give access? By granting. So that is the grant statement. And if they wanted to remove the access to the any developer or any user, then they can use the revoke. So this is not, we are not going to touch this because this is not part of us. This will be taken care by administrators. Okay, so nowhere we are going to participate in this particular place. It's out of the boundary. And then the TCL. So TCL is used to manage transactions in the database. So this is, there is a chances to use them. Again, I'm saying this will be useful for only ADF and SSIS developers, not for Power BI developers. Okay, so you can commit the transactions, you can roll back the transactions, and you can save the point. So at least you need to have an idea what is this commit and rollback. I'll take you through this, the basics of this. And data querying language, this is very, very, very important for us. So even if you ignore rest of them, I don't feel, but this one is very important for us. So data querying language is used to retrieve the data. Retrieve means what? Reading. We are going to read the data from where? From one table or from more tables in the database. You can read the data from a single table, or you can read the data from the multiple tables. You can read the data from multiple tables also. So if you wanted to read the data from the single table, how you are going to read it? If you wanted to read the data from the multiple tables, how we are going to read that, we are going to say it as part of this particular situations. So if you are strong enough in the DQL, then you can get a job easily for Power BI because reading is very important. Now let's talk about more in data definition language. So I told you data definition language is used to define the objects. Is used to define the objects, the structure of the database, and we are going to create a table. We are going to modify the objects, whatever the objects that we discussed. So all those things we are going to do with the help of data definition language. So the main purpose of this DDL is to specify the schema or structure of the database. All the statements will be used to describe how data is organized and stored in the database. If you don't have this DDL, then you cannot organize the data. You cannot specify what data you wanted to store it. So definitely data definition language is very important. Okay, you just follow me. That is more enough to crack the interview, to get the job easily, and you can easily clear your SQL questions. The very first one I'm having create. If I wanted to create any object, then I'm going to use the create. To modify object, then we are going to use the alter. And to drop the object, we are going to use the drop. Truncate is also as part of the DDL. Truncate, what does it mean? We'll see that more in detail about each and every individual. So before going to this data types, why we need to go for data types? Just have a look on this particular place so that you can get better clarity. Here is the one. What is the purpose of the create? I told you create is used to create the database objects. So tables are the objects, views are the objects, indexes are the objects, and so on. If I wanted to create a table, this is the syntax. This is the approach that we need to follow. create table name. Whatever the table name you wanted to give, you can give the table name. And then the bracket is going to be open here and the bracket is going to be closed. So inside that, we have to specify what are the columns required. So depends on the requirement, you are going to decide how many number of columns we require, what kind of data we are going to bring into this particular place. So you can feel that when you see the data, you can feel what kind of data that is. So for that reason, we are going to talk about the data types. So let's see the syntax here, column 1. Any name that you can give, the data type of the column. So data integrity will be there in the databases. If you say numbers, it will take numbers. If you say text, it will take text. So data type and constant. And column 2, comma separated. The columns will be separated with comma. Column 2 and its data type and its constant. So like this, as many columns as you required, you are going to add it to the table. So now to decide what type of data we are going to store in the table, first we should know about the data types. We should know about the data types so that we can easily specify what type of data you are going to get it. So I'm just going to give the brief idea about the data types so that we'll go for how we can create a objects in the today's session. Just give me a moment. Yeah. So data types, we need to know about it. So what are the use of these data types? What are the types of data types we have? Let's talk about it. So not only SQL Server, any database if we go, or apart from the database, even in Power BI also we have a data types. So everywhere we are having a different types of data. So you will be having the numbers, you will be having the text, you will be having the date, and so on. So if I wanted to handle the numbers, how you are going to handle it? Or if I wanted to handle the text, how you are going to handle the text? So let's have a brief idea about this. SQL Server supports various data types that can be used to define the data type of the data that can be stored in a table column or variable. So when you're declaring the variable, we are going to specify what data type it is. When you're creating a table for that particular column, what type of data you're going to use, we have to specify the data type for the table column as well as even for the variables also. So in these two places, we are going to use the data types. If I wanted to store the text data, what are the data types are there? Just brief idea, we don't require to remember all these things. So char is a fixed length character string. It is a fixed length character string. So no one will ask you what is the difference between char and varchar. It's a very basic question. Okay. So I don't want to touch all those things. We don't require to know about them. So at least if you have an idea what data types we are having, that is more enough. And we are not a freshers. Okay. So char is a fixed length character data type. If I say 10 space will be available. It is not going to, it is, let's say for example, I have specified character 10. I'm just taking the name. Okay. So here if I say Raj, so 3 characters will be used. 3 characters only will be used. Rest of the 7 will be having the spaces. That means this char data type is going to waste the space because it is a fixed length. You're saying 10 means 10 will be there. So in very rare cases, you're going to use the char data type. And if you feel there is a fixed length of characters, then you can go for the char data type. Otherwise, you just ignore the char data type. And most of the times we are going to use the varchar. If I use the varchar for saying name, varchar 10, If I store the Raj here, it will allocate only 3 spaces only. 3 bytes of the memory only is going to be allocated. Okay, so even if we specify 10, it will not take 10. Whatever the size it is coming, for that size only it is going to give it. So that is the importance here. So variable length character data type, it is going to change, depends on the size of the data. It is going to change the size here. So because of that reason, we used to call it as a variable length character string data type. And we have a text data type also here. It's a variable length character data with maximum length. So you can specify, and most of the times we don't use this data type. Mostly we are going to use the varchar and char data type. And there is a n varchar is also there. If you wanted to store Unicode strings, then we are going to use the n varchar also. So n varchar also, there is a chances to use the data type. So varchar will be used to store only English characters. But if you wanted to store other languages as part of the table, so if you observe, the Chinese language will be there, okay, for the product names. So if that is the case, then you cannot use the varchar data type. We are going to use the n varchar data type. It is used to store all languages characters. So this will be used for only English characters. So this is important. Okay, so n varchar. So you can set this point, this is more enough. What is the intention of this n varchar? So brief idea I'm just giving, I'm not talking more in detail each and every data type. In the same way for numbers also we have a data types here, int, to store the int number, big int, float. So big integer number you're going to store here. So there is a range, you don't need to remember this range, just ignore this range. And if it is a 4 digit, then you can go for integer, 4 bytes of numbers you can store. So big int is 8 int is going to store. Float is like you can store floating point numbers. So if you have a decimal places, then you can use this. Okay, so and decimal is also there, decimal data type is also there to use as part of the numbers. So mostly you are going to use the integer and float, or decimal also you can use it. So in my case, I have used very frequently this integer data type and a money data type. So money data type basically it is a other data type, but still you can use it for the numbers. And we have used this decimal also and float. Float is very rare we have used. It all depends on the requirement, you can use them. On date and time. So to store the date, we are going to use the date data type. To store the time, we are going to use the time data type. And if you wanted to store both of them, date and time, then you are going to use the date time data type. So by seeing these names, you can feel what they are going to store. And Boolean data type is a true or false data types. In SQL Server, we are going to call that as a bit. So Boolean data that can be stored either 0 or 1. So 0 means it is a false, 1 means it is a true. So Boolean data type is also important in many places. We are going to use this very many places. And binary data type is the fixed length binary data type, and var binary is variable length binary data types. So these data types will be used to store the images. If you wanted to store the images as part of the database, then we are going to use these data types. And other data types are there. If you wanted to store XML data, we have a XML data type. To store the money data type, if you wanted to store the currency data, then you can use the money. And unique identifier there is a chances to have a unique identifier data as part of the table. Okay, so these are all the data types that we are going to have to handle the respective data. To store the numbers, we have a number data types. To store the text, we have a text data types. To handle dates, we're having a date and time data. So let's touch now create statement. So create statement is used to create a table or views or anything. So simply we can say create statement is used to create the database objects. So this is the syntax I'm taking again, create table. So what you are going to create? Are you going to create a table? Then say table. Are you going to create a view? Then say view. Are you going to create a stored procedure? Then say stored procedure. So whatever you wanted to create, you have to specify what type of object you are going to create here. So depends on your requirement, you are going to specify. So at this point of time, I wanted to create a table. So because of that reason, I'm saying create table. So when I say table, then we need to say the object name. If it is a table, then we are going to say table name. If it is a view, then we are going to say view name. If it is a stored procedure, then we are going to say procedure name. So I'm going to say table name. The name of the table we need to specify. Inside that, column 1, data type and constant. It's a bigger topic about this constant. If time permits, I'll explain about this. At this point of time, you can ignore the constants. And table 2, data type. Sorry, column 2, data type. Column 3, data type. Column n and data type. I wanted to create a table. Let's come to here. Create a table with the following columns. So I wanted to take these columns. Okay. So columns is employee number, employee name, job, salary. I wanted to create a table with these columns. Then if I wanted to create a table with these columns, then how you are going to create it? So what is the first statement you are going to take? Create. Create what? Table. What is the name of the table? You can give any name. I'm just giving employee. Open a bracket and close a bracket. This is the object of the database. And then provide the list of the columns. Minimum one column should be there for a table. Without at least one column, you cannot create a database. You cannot create a table. So minimum one column is required. So what is the column name I'm taking? This is the column name. And then what is the database? Let's take this int. We have a tiny int also. So tiny int will be used to store only positive numbers. It will not store negative numbers. We have a small int. So it will store positive number and negative number. The range of the numbers is very less. Okay. So to avoid this, you can go for int. Okay. So just brief idea about I'm taking, and depends on the situation and requirement, you can take the database. You can take the respective data type. So since we are not a database developers, I'm not going in detail about that data types. Integer. And next column is what? Ename. So name is a characters. Name is a character. So since it is a character, we need to specify a varchar. We need to specify varchar data type. Here I'm going to give a 30 size. Let's give a comma. And then job is there. Job is also text only. job varchar, same 30 I'm taking. And then next is what sal, that is money data type, because it is a currency. Salary is a currency. So I'm just taking money data type. So this is how you're going to create a table. This is how you're going to create a table. If I execute this statement, it is going to create an object. So at this point of time, no objects are available in this particular database. No object is available, right? Let's execute this statement. Once I execute this statement, now if you go and refresh this databases, especially these tables, select the tables and refresh it. Refresh this button. Hit on expand and you can see there is a table called employee. Employee table is created. Employee table is created. If you expand this table, you can see columns are available, keys are available, constraints are available, triggers are available, indexes are available, and statistics. So important for us is columns at this point of time. You can see here what types of data types. Column name, data type, and constraint. I told you ignore the constraint because that is different topic. At this particular point of time, constraints are not much important. So if time permits, I'll take you through the constraints later. And column name, data type, null. Column name, data type, null. Column name, money data type. So these are all the fixed length will be there. For integer, fixed length data type. For currency, fixed length, 8 bytes, I guess for this. Okay, this is 4 bytes. Okay, but when it comes to the characters, you have to specify the length from outside. Okay, so predefined length is not going to be available for the characters. Only for the numbers only we have a fixed length for the numbers. So no one will ask what is the size of the integer or what is the size of the small int and so on. So here my intention is how you know how we can create a table. That is the main intention. I have created a table now. That is what I have done here. Now there is a alter. That is the second statement. So why we are going to use this alter? I have an object with the 4 columns. I have a object with the 4 columns. I wanted to add one more new column. I wanted to add one more new column. Requirement is what it is saying. Requirement demanding to add a column. That is one point. The second point is requirement demanding to change the data type or size. Requirement demanding to remove the column. So 3 possibilities are there. I forgot to add one of the column. Fortunately or unfortunately. Then how you are going to add a column? Or one of the name is having 35 characters, but here I'm having 30 characters only. So rest of the 5 characters will be truncated. Then we need to change the size of the column. We need to change the size of the column. Or there is a one additional column was there that is not required at this point of time. Or after 1 year, business requirement is demanding to remove one of the column. Then how you are going to do it? So all these points will be coming under alter. We are altering the object. We are altering the object based on the requirement. It's a very common word. Okay, that is what I'm going to take you through now. Alter statement is used to modify the structure of an existing object. It is used to modify the existed object. You can modify the table, you can modify the view, you can modify the stored procedure, you can modify the stored function also. The alter statement allows you to add, modify, delete columns, constraints, indexes, triggers. You can do all these things. The syntax of this is available here. Alter, what do you want to alter? Do you want to alter the table? Do you want to alter the view? Do you want to alter the stored procedure? What do you want to alter that we need to specify here? Alter what we wanted to alter that you need to specify. Just follow this one. I'm just going to write the statement here. Adding a new column to the employee table. Alter. What do you want to alter? Table. I wanted to alter the table. Which table? We already created a table. I wanted to alter the employee table. Then I wanted to add a column. Click add what? Column. Add column. Column name. Then data type. You can use any one of them in this particular place. To add a column, we are going to add it. The name of the column and data type of the column. Ignore the constraint. Alter, add column name. Column name it is. Column name is what? I'm just going to take email. I wanted to add the email address. This is a varchar 100. Let's say it is 30 at this point of time. And you can ignore the constraint. So I'm going to execute this. Alter table, what you're doing, adding a new column. So at this point of time, how many columns are there? 4 columns are there in the table. I'm going to execute this. Now it is altered. And if you go and see this refresh of this table, expand the columns, you can see there is a email. Email is available. And next, what is the syntax here? Alter. If I wanted to change this data type, the size is not sufficient. I wanted to change the size. The size of this particular column is 30 is there. I wanted to make this 100. So I'm just saying modify email column size with 100. Same alter only. What you're altering? Table. What is the name of the table? Employee. So what you're doing? I wanted to alter the column size. You can see here. Alter column structure. First alter is to modify the table. Second alter is to modify the column structure. Okay, if you wanted to modify the column structure, then we are going to use the alter statement. So what you are altering? You have to specify the name of the column. What is the name of the column? Email. Data type. I'm just going to say 100. Alter. What you're altering? Column. How to take this? Alter column. Column name. This is the syntax for that. Let's execute this. At this time, you have a 30, but after execution of this, you can see 100. Let's refresh these columns. Now we can see 100. I wanted to remove this email address. remove email column from employee table. If I wanted to remove the column, how we are going to remove it? You can also remove by right clicking on it. You can remove it. But I wanted to remove with code. Let's say alter table name is employee. Here we need to say alter drop column. Drop column name is email. So this is the syntax. I wanted to drop the column from the table. If I execute this, then it is not going to have this column. Let's execute it. Now, if we just refresh this columns list, we can see email address is not available. So that is what I'm saying here. Okay. And I wanted to talk about this drop. So drop is just to remove the object. Drop is just to remove the object. The syntax for this is drop table. Let's say object type. We'll keep it as a table and table name. Since we are talking about table, I'm just going to say table name. I wanted to drop the employee. Drop table name is employee. So this is how we are going to create it. We are going to drop a table. If you want to drop the table, then you are going to use this. If you want to drop the index, then you can use the index. If you want to drop the stored procedure, you can say drop stored procedure. Or if you wanted to drop the view, you can say drop view name. So I'm going to take this statement here. Removing table from the database. This is very dangerous operation. Without having prior knowledge or proper knowledge, do not go and execute this particular statement. This is very dangerous, and moreover, they don't give the access to remove the objects. Let's execute this. Now database is going to be removed. If you refresh this tables, you cannot find the employee table. Okay, so we'll talk about this truncate later, where exactly we're going to use that. I'm going to take you through that. So today we have seen how we can create an object, how we are going to create an object that we have seen, and how we are going to feed the data. After creation of the view, after creation of this table, again I'm re-executing since it was removed. Execute this statement. Now table is available. If I wanted to read the data from the table, we are going to use the select statement. We are going to talk about very more in detail about this. If I execute this statement, no data is available. I wanted to feed the data into this table. If you wanted to feed the data into this table, we are going to use the DML statements. That is insert, update, delete. And select also we are going to use in two situations. So till now we have seen how we can create an object, how we can modify the object. The way we have created a table, we have a views also. We are going to talk about the views. We are going to talk about the stored procedures so that we'll get better clarity how we can create the a few objects in the database. The very first object that we have talked about is table. So I'm stopping here. If you have any questions, you can ask me.
Bhaskar, we have modified the tables like
Mhm.
dropping one of the columns. So
Mhm.
if I've done that incorrectly, instead of dropping a column employee salary, I've dropped the column email. So do I have the option to undo that particular transaction?
No, we
Okay.
don't have. We have to do very carefully, but we can re-add it. Let's say you
Mm.
removed it.
Okay.
Here it is. Okay, you can re-add it.
Mm-hmm.
We have it
Okay.
option right here. You can add
Okay.
it.
Okay.
But only one problem is
Mhm.
data also is going to be affected. Basically,
Yes.
when there is a data, it will not allow you to remove it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so after removing the data only, if table is empty, then only can do it. If there is a
Okay.
data, if my guess is correct, I didn't come
Mm-hmm.
across this kind of situation, but
Mm-hmm.
we'll see that after adding some data, if it allows, will it allow to remove the column or not?
Okay. Sure.
Okay, so till
Yeah.
now you're clear on this, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, okay, then we'll see on tomorrow to talk about the data manipulation language. Thank you for joining.